It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And today we are going to talk about TKO boxing. We are also going to talk about Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach, the first fight, not the upcoming one that they're fixing up right now. We're going to talk about Warner Brothers, TNT, Discovery, all of that, because there might be some interest in getting some media rights there. And John is going to tell us about fixing boxing, because everybody's claiming they can fix boxing. But can they really? John has some ideas on that. Now, before we get into all of that, I would like to ask that you guys subscribe so that you have access to our bonus content. We are grateful for the influx of new subscribers. Thank you so much. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we want to check in with John and see how he's been over the last few days.
Good. It's beautiful out here in LA. Went hiking, went to the gym. I'm exhausted. I went to the gym and hiking today, same as yesterday. And it's at my old age, that's just too much. I'm ready for a nap, tell you the truth.
I love that you're getting back into your summer routine. A lot of you out there don't know, but John's actually a pretty active dude and goes out constantly as soon as the weather turns nice. But I have news for y'all. He's headed back to Minnesota this week. So we're going to be back to phone connections. So I want to give everyone a little heads up on that, because this will be the last episode that you'll hear the excellent audio. Next week, it'll be just a hair under excellent. It'll be in between great and excellent. So
it'll be acceptable, but I'm going to enjoy LA we can. Right now, the Film Noir Festival is starting up this weekend. So if anybody's in LA and at the Egyptian Theater, you'll probably see me. Tonight, Roadhouse is playing.
Oh, the original, right?
Yeah. What do you mean by the original, I guess? Is
not the Conor McGregor version.
Well, yeah, also not the Patrick Swayze version. We're talking about Ida Lupino and Richard Widmark.
Oh, you're talking about the OG.
Yes,
OG.
It's the Film Noir Festival. It's not, Roadhouse is not a film noir.
I know, but I mean, hey, who knows what people think it is? I didn't even know that there was an OG version until just this moment.
Well, now, people know. They can try to find it and watch it. It's worth it. There's some really good movies this weekend. So I will be there if you're, maybe not every night, every movie, but I'll be for a lot of them.
Oh, that's cool. Do they allow cats?
No.
I'm just wondering if Miss Isla will be accompanying you.
No, she will not. Definitely not. So there's no movies there for her, except later there's a Cat's Eyes playing Stephen King. She might go to that.
Oh, okay. So let's get down into some boxing, because Dan Rafael reported that Tank Davis Lamont Roach sold 260,000 pay-per-views. A lot of the people on Twitter and on social media seem divided down the middle. We had some people saying that was dismal, and then we had other people saying that was a good number. What do you think?
Well, it's not a bad number per se. I think people, they look at that number and then they compare Tank Davis to Canelo Alvarez. He is not Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez generates massive pay-per-view sales. Not even massive, I guess. With Bibble, it was like 400,000 or 500,000, on DAZN. But he can sell versus almost anybody, Canelo Alvarez. He is the biggest star in North America. But Gervonta Davis, when you consider that his weight class he fights at a lower weight class, you consider the fact who his opponent is, that Roach was not a person that a lot of people were clamoring for, and the fact that he sells a lot of tickets. 260,000 pay-per-view eyes isn't spectacular, but it's pretty solid. It shows he has a very solid hardcore fan base. And you put him against the right opponent, and the right opponent might be Lamont Roach in a rematch, or Shakur Stevens, or any other potential opponent they have. He is what, when we talk to Steven Espinoza, he is that 1 + 1 sometimes equals not 2, but 4 or 8. I think this is evidence that he has a very solid, strong easily the second strongest fan base in North America, because 260,000 pay-per-views, people look at that as a disaster. It's bad for ESPN when they're paying UFC $20 million, but for the promotion, when they do this, that's over $13 million in revenue. Throw in the gate, you're over $20 million. You throw in the foreign and international rights and sponsorship, you're in the mid $20 million or higher. That's a pretty respectable amount of revenue for an event. That's enough to pay Tank 8 figures and his opponent several million right there.
Do you think that people were expecting more because of how well he did against, the gate was against Ryan Garcia?
Well, I mean, the Ryan Garcia one's misleading because Ryan Garcia is the 1 + 1 = 4 or 8, not 2. You have an opponent that people are really interested in Garcia. Now, Ryan can't do this on his own either, though. Ryan's not fighting no names and getting $7 million gates and 260,000 buys. He's doing just below Tank on that stuff. But when you put those two big stars together, you can get massive amounts. Hopefully it gets, the rematch should do much better. My guess, rematch almost probably doubles in the pay-per-view buys. There'll be interest in it. But to get back to the question, is this a bad or good number? It's bad if you assume he's a Canelo Alvarez. It's good if you're realistic and you can see that this is a sizable amount of money that keeps the lights on, keeps the show going, and it's better against an opponent again that as his B side was not in help on this fight. It just shows that he has his basement. This is basically his basement number is very solid, and it can only go up from there.
Lamont Roach gave an interview a couple of days ago, and the interviewer asked him how his life has changed since the fight. And he talked about he's getting recognized everywhere he goes, that people were coming to his house to get his autograph. People that he's known all his life were coming to his house to get his autograph. Just wild stuff. So if you were to estimate, just roll out a ballpark figure of what you think the rematch could do. Do you think it would do double 260?
I mean, that's my guess right now. I think there's enough interest. It made a big enough story that it will do double. The people that were on the fence about getting it had no interest. Now they might come back to see if Tank will, if in the rematch Tank will lose or not. So double seems fair, give or take a bit. I don't think it's going to be like. I think, Gervonta Davis versus Lomachenko versus Shakur, potentially Keyshawn if he gets another win or two to build up his prestige. I think those ones would do bigger numbers, even than more than double what this did. But against Lamont in a rematch, I double seems like a safe. I think that's a very strong possibility. I think you put in double is 500,000 buys or so. The promotion gets about $50 per buy after the broadcast, after the split. Not as much with the digital now and the fees the broadcaster takes. So you're talking that's 30 million in revenue right there. That's a sizable amount.
Now, for those out there listening that might not know, who promoted the first fight?
The first one, well, it's under the PBC banner. Goosen, I believe, was the promoter, right?
Okay, I'm asking you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay.
That's the one that does almost all of Davis's fights under PBC. So I'm pretty positive that it was because Roach's promoter is Gary Jonas, which we'll probably talk about later.
Yes, we will. All right, so TNT Warner Discovery said that they were interested in getting rights to the UFC. What does that tell us about what their next media rights deal might be?
Well, it tells us there's a lot more interest. I mean, we've in the last couple of weeks, even though ESPN said they're going to let the deal expire without negotiating and then negotiate afterwards, we know that UFC supposedly is interested in Netflix. Netflix seems to be interested in combat sports. Amazon mentioned that they might be interested in it. You got Warner Brothers Discovery has said something about it. So there's multiple players, and then there's other players that haven't been brought in yet that might also. I mean, NBC's been voiced as a possibility. So the more people that voice or publicly say that they have some interest in it, that's obvious that there's more potential bidders, and that should drive up the price. So what that tells us is that, partly I wonder if this is somewhat leaked by Endeavor. I mean, even though it wasn't leaked, it was in an interview where someone from TNT said it, but maybe someone pushed them from Endeavor because they're trying to get some pushback from ESPN, a high stake game. But the major thing is, the price for the UFC should be, we were thinking that the price might be scaled down because the ESPN is not as interested. The fewer players there's to bid, then the price go down. But now it's sounding like, there's a lot of interest. They might get closer to that $1 billion price tag that they're asking for. I don't think they'll get up to $1 billion, but they're shooting for at least like 800 million, 900 million. I mean, we are on the outside. We don't know, but it doesn't seem shocking to me if they would get something like that. If they're floating numbers like that and they have multiple bidders that are already voicing interest, then that sounds like a strong possibility. And Warner Brothers, we should know, they lost the not NFL, but NBA. Mm-hmm. And because they lost the NBA, they lost apparently like $1 billion in revenue from advertising, which they've made up somewhat, but they need something to fill that hole. And so they have this ton of money that they didn't spend on the NBA that they can throw at the UFC. And UFC's got to just be, their mouth is watering thinking that we have another bidder that has a huge chunk of money and desperation. they might be throwing money at us.
There was an article by Lance Pugmire on Boxing that gave us some new details about their TKO's boxing venture. What new info did that give us?
Well, it actually had a bunch of stuff in it. I can't say it's 100% accurate because there might be stuff going on in TKO that hasn't been revealed to the public. But I do know that Lance did a very good job of getting like actual contacts and talking to people that have been negotiating with them in those. So what it had is the pay structure is one thing it had. What they're going to be paid the boxers as part of this TKO boxing venture. So that's one thing it had. Not only did it give us details about how they're going to pay the boxers, it told us that they're going to have their own champion belt, their own company belt, as they described it. It talked about how they're going to have a management arm to the company. So there was a lot of details in there that we didn't have before that, again, raised probably more questions than they answered.
What did you think of the purse, the purse reveal?
Well, the purse reveal was, I guess it's not completely shocking because we did hear that Dana White's TKO Endeavor, or not Endeavor, the company, but his entity he was making he was going to build them from the ground up. So it didn't sound like they were getting, the highest elite stars. They're going to build guys from the ground up. If you're doing that, the purses, are not going to be, astronomical. And these purses were right, mid-tier, development level purses for boxing. So they were good, but good for that level. But this is not the purses you see with guys that are headlining, champion bouts on ESPN or going to Riyadh season or something like that. So it's, not surprising, but I guess it did surprise a lot of people.
Would you say, from where you're sitting right now at this point in time, as you're looking at it, that they're going to be a mid-tier promotion?
Oh yeah. This is not the UFC of boxing. Now, we kind of talked about this before. It didn't feel like it was going to be the UFC of boxing, right? Mm-hmm. But we also got to remember, this is the Dana White TKO entity that they're working with Turkey. He also has his Ring Magazine promotion, right? Which he's going to probably do Canelo versus Crawford and other major events with. So there's almost like two things together. When I look at this, I imagine more that it almost feels to me, and I could be wrong, but it feels like this, besides just being a promotion, this is their version of the Ultimate Fighter. But instead of feeding to their own company, they're going to be feeding boxers, build these guys up, lock them into long-term contracts on the cheap here, even though this is better than MMA pay, I guess, at the championship level for, a second tier championship, and then send them off to a Riyadh season they'll migrate to with some name value. That's the feeling I get, that that this is less, it's a league per se in air quotes. Again, it doesn't make any sense in the boxing world to tell you the truth, but they call it a league. It's designed, I think, to build up guys from the ground up, but it's not, these aren't people aren't going to take over the world. They will have to migrate to another promotion. I think what they're going to do is they're going to use it to migrate to Riyadh season.
How long do you estimate before they merge those two? Because you know they will not be able to sit back and let money just sit on the table.
Well, I don't know if they're going to merge them per se, because you got it. Okay, Riyadh season, Turkey right now supposedly has 18-month deals with the other promoters. He talked all nice about them last time, but in some ways you could view that as Turkey just trying to, someone told him, hey, don't give away the plans. Don't make it so public what we're trying to do. We want to, we have to take them by surprise, and you're no longer will they be surprised by our efforts. So Dana White's venture here, it could stay a separate venture, right? It could stay this one entity that builds up boxers, because the brand value in boxing is not going to be as strong, because boxing has existed as a sport where UFC first mover advantage, let it be for most fans, the sport got identified as UFC because they heard about the UFC before they even heard about the sport. Here, you're not going to make the brand more valuable in boxing, but they'll have the second promotion that they can build guys up. They have their own company title. And then you have Riyadh season. If Turkey wants to put on big events and blow even more money on top stars, well, eventually, if you can get these guys more renown, you can then send them on to Turkey. I don't think now when I say that they're not going to merge them, I mean, they might keep the brand name separate, the two entities, but they'll be under the same umbrella parent company, I imagine, right? Where Turkey or the Saudis basically run everything, and TKO is given the managerial job to run this and the Turkey's other major tentpole events.
Does it tell us anything about how they're going to approach the Ali Act?
Well, it gave some hints, I guess, and that's where it raises some more questions. One thing it says in here that their contracts are only 3 years. They're going to have people agree to 3-year terms. That might be just the base, though. The question I have, and I'd like someone to find out, is do they have extensions, right? Because 3 years to build up a fighter, a prospect, 3 years is about the perfect amount of time to build someone up, and then you're going to let them go at their most valuable, right? So this actually would be great for boxers. These mid-tier guys can make a decent salary, decent wage purse, build up, and then move on. But as we know from a lot of contracts, MMA and boxing, there's often extensions. So if you win the title, this company title, does that add an extension? Do they have options to keep you longer? Because if they signed you kind of like an Ultimate Fighter contract, that was if you won back in the day, you won the title, you got a 9-fight deal, right? So you were locked in the UFC for basically 4 to 5 years, especially if you won a championship in the UFC after that. My question is, can they extend these contracts? Because then the fighters could be more valuable. They could build them up, but just as if they're most valuable, they can extend the contract and keep them for the years they're the most valuable, or use it as leverage. On top of it, they talk about they'll let boxers keep 90% if they of the compensation if they loan them out. But they give an example of Riyadh season. I wonder if in the contract it says they basically can only go to Riyadh season, that they're not going to be loaned out to other promoters. That again, this would be a way to funnel them into Riyadh season. As far as the Ali Act portions, well, it does mention there's going to be a company title. So right then, I guess, are they worried about the Ali Act saying you can't have your own title? Doesn't seem like it. They're going to have a company championship, although maybe they're arguing it's not a real world champion. It doesn't compete with them. It's just again, the UFC's trophy of the night. There's that. That's one thing that makes you wonder about, are they going to violate the Ali Act doing that? And the other part is they have this managerial wing. Well, there's a firewall under the Ali Act. There is a firewall between management and promotions, and promoters cannot be compensated by management. Management can't be compensated by promoters. Well, even though you're a separate company, as managers, if you're under the same parent company, that sounds like a clear violation of the Ali Act. So I guess right now my answer is they don't seem too concerned about it.
I have a question. This is going to tie back in a little bit with question 2 about the broadcast deal. Would TKO try to get this boxing entity, in 18 months or down the road? Would they try to get a broadcast deal? I'm using air quotes in case that's not feasible in any way, shape, or form, but I can't help but wonder.
No, I think they're already shopping for a broadcast deal for this. They are making the pitch that we're the UFC. We run the UFC and WWF. We know what we're doing. Let's give us a big deal now, and then we'll fill up what you need. And in some ways, this reminds me, you see some executives now, like Elon Musk will do this, where Elon Musk will declare that, oh my God, we're going to have a robot, a self-autonomous robot in 2 years. Stock will skyrocket. They're not even close to it, but they can use some of that wealth, the stock price, to maybe actually build it at this point, right? He's done it repeatedly. Here it's like, we don't have anything yet, but we're promised we're going on. We have a track record of these other sports. Maybe someone will sign them a big broadcast deal. Now they can use that money to cover the events. They have more money. They have the money to work with now without even tapping into the Saudis. So I think that's a possibility that they're going to get the deal before they even sign any. I mean, they're shopping for boxers, but before they fill up the roster and even hold the event, they're probably in a deal before they even have a track record where they can look at it and say, what are the type of ratings, what type of stars you have. I think that's a strong possibility. Also, and interesting too, they noted that here they think they're likely to use the traditional weight classes. I find that hard to believe that they're going to use the original 8, flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight, welter, middleweight. Was it light, heavyweight, and heavyweight? I think I got that right.
Yep. Because
you're talking about 4 of the weight classes are below flyweight in MMA. So I just don't see them doing the so many of the lightest weights, because those are the ones that fans seem the least interested in.
One last question on this part. You talked about UFC wanting to get around $1 billion for their next broadcast rights deal. What does that compare to, what's an NBA broadcast deal look like, or an MLB or an NFL, just a ballpark in comparison with what the UFC wants? To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Ooh! Okay, the face!